3, 2, 1.
Hey guys, it's Challenger. Today I promised everybody I was going to tell you how to convert an ACES-I 2 sound file to ACES-I 3 format using the FMOD system. This works if you have the original file and you don't have one that's been mixed into a single audio file. That's the way I did the majority of my aircraft engines. If you look at this, this is the P-47D-25 from ACES-I 2. This is one of the last aircraft that I worked on, and I was getting ready to release it when ACES-I 3 was announced. So I stopped work on it, primarily because I suspected that something like FMOD was coming. In fact, I had wished for it. In this mix here, you can see where I have the P-47, the whistle sound it makes as it goes by, recorded separately from the propeller and the engine. And excuse me, the sound of the P-47 while it is at cruise speed. The reason that I did it this way was because the requirement for ACES-I 2 was for us to use a single sound file that would span the entire range of possibilities for that aircraft or vehicle. So I mixed all sorts of sounds together, and this was a troublesome method to use because there was no way to determine ahead of time what you would have to do in order to make a sound work so that it worked well at idle and at maximum speed and didn't have any aberrations in the middle. It required a lot of soul searching in some cases, and in fact this includes even more than it is indicating here, because I would take the airframe ambience and mix it into the original sounds. So the only thing that's really pure here would be like the whistle sound and the engine sound. The prop sound itself would have a little bit of the aircraft engine in it as well. And that way I didn't have to use any type of Foley method in order to create the propeller. Now, today, I have a way to do props so that I don't have to record the engine. Anyway, what we do in order to get this into ACES-I 3 format is to take a single track and put it into a multi-track method like this, multi-track session, and we change the pitch on it. We do a pitch shift so that we expand it from, let's say I've recorded this at 1,000 RPM, which most aircraft are doing at idle, up and down, so that you can get all those little interesting RPM ranges in between, maximum, minimum, etc. And that works extremely well for vehicles. We'll see what it does for airplanes later. The way that I'm gonna talk for a minute about microphones and field recorders, dead cats. The way that I started off with this is my wife gave me a Sony video camera, and it had one of those standard mics that sits on top. So anytime you moved your hand on the camera, if anybody near you coughed or screamed, "Oh my goodness," or whatever, you would pick that up on the mic. There wasn't any way to avoid it. And the first thing that I did was I took the standard microphone off of there, and I went out and I got this $3,000 Sennheiser microphone, and it rejected sounds on the side and behind, and it only picked up what was in front. And that worked extremely well, except it was vulnerable to moisture. It was terrible when it came to moisture, in fact. I took that camera to England and just about destroyed the microphone because it's just, you know, super humid over there. There's fog and rain, and it's just a mess. So instead of using that video camera and relying on the sound of it, because, if, you know, as I discovered when I was, you know, manhandling the thing, it would pick up every noise I made. So what I did was I went out and I got a field recorder. I started off with a Tascam, just a simple little thing that, you know, it can do 4 channels, but really only 2 of them are what I consider reliable powered ports on it. And I plugged in some decent microphones with that, Sennheiser again. And because I got sick and tired of wind noise coming through, even the foam muddies, they call them, allow some wind to come through in extreme conditions. I went and got a dead cat, and I went and bought blimps so that I could put the microphone inside of a blimp, and I could cover it with a dead cat, and it would muffle all that wind sound. And if you go on to YouTube trying to find some good sounds or whatever, that's what you'll find, is that people use the most disgusting microphones, and they always have wind sound. And anyway, when I started off making sounds, I was doing this just for me. That's all I wanted to do. I had no care in the world about providing sound for anyone else. It was just for me. And I was primarily interested in the tanks, the P-51, and there's a couple of German planes that I did. They don't exist anymore, you know? So I took the sounds, or at the time I was taking sounds off of YouTube if I could find them, but somebody came around and they asked me, this is about the time I started design school actually, if I could create sounds for them. Somebody in my squad wanted a Spitfire sound or something. And what I'd learned in school was you can do this, and you can do anything you want. You can take sounds off of YouTube or whatever you find them on the internet for your own use. But the minute that you take it and you go to distribute to somebody else, you can't use that sound anymore. You have to create your own. So you either have to create a Foley sound, or you have to get out there and record your own. And that's when I decided it was time for me to go to Tank Fest, which is in England. And I was going to go ahead and put my money where my mouth was and go out and record sounds, and it was a disaster because, like I said, microphones picked up moisture and crowd noise and all sorts of other things. I was able to get more or less private situations with some of the aircraft and some of the tanks, but I never was able to get everything I wanted. I wasn't happy. So I came back home and I bought even more equipment. I can't even tell you how much equipment I have. It's just, I've got low freak mics, I've got distance mics, I've designed laser mics and built them. I've done all these things in order to capture sound so that I can create my own sound pack and distribute it. Okay, so that's where I'm at now. The elements of an aircraft are the engine prop and supercharger. Sometimes there's a duct that whistles when it flies by. Each aircraft has its own characteristic. Generally, even if an aircraft shares the same engine with another airplane, it won't sound the same, and that's because it has different exhaust stacks on it and it has a different propeller. The airframe itself also helps modify the audio. Okay, so you can't just take a Merlin engine and stick it in every airplane. It's not going to work like that. Okay, you have to have all these other sounds too. All right, that's one of the realizations that I came to early on. The other thing is that even with tanks, you have engine, exhaust, the tracks, the turrets, the if it has wheels or whatever, like an M3, you have to record all that stuff, and it all has to be mixed together. Well, along comes Aces High 3, and you can put all that in there. Not only can you put it all in there, but it's ridiculous what you can do. You can take a tank track and you can modify the speed with this system, so that when a tank is creeping along at just 1 mile an hour, the tank track is slowing down. And we didn't have that in Aces High 2. If a tank was moving, it sounded like it was moving at full speed, and it didn't. There wasn't any creeping. So that was one of my wishes early on, was so that we could change that. All right. So here you have the P-47, and you can see all the tracks that I have. And I don't mean tank tracks, I mean audio tracks. When it comes to something like the Tiger tank, I would take this engine sound or the exhaust sound or whatever, what have you, track, and I would push one copy of it, just like this right engine in here, and into a mix, a multi-track mix, and I would pitch shift it. Let me show you what I mean. So here we have the Maybach engine, and this is at 1500 RPM. Let's see if I can find this file. Tiger 2, this is the exhaust, not the engine. This is the exhaust sound. Now this tank was running up a high idle, 1500 RPM. It's pretty high for a tank. But it needed to warm its engine up because it was getting ready to go around a circuit and show off to the crowd. So when I recorded it, not only did it, let me start over here. This tank is different from the other Tiger 2 that's out there, okay? Which I don't even know where the other one is, but I've seen video of it. This tank has what they call combat mufflers on it, which is basically a can that fits over the top of the exhaust pipe, okay? That prevents people in combat from shoving a grenade up your exhaust, which they would do if they could. So when you see that Tiger 2 running around with just the two pipes sticking out, that would be a tank that was produced later. When they have these exhaust cans on there, the mufflers, they're intended to prevent somebody from blowing the tank up or otherwise disabling it. So that's why it sounds different from perhaps the other tanks you've heard. Alright, now, in order to modify the speed that you're hearing of this exhaust here, you have to do a couple of things. This is Adobe Edition here, by the way. Now the sound, I think it's called Sound Forge that Sony puts out, and there's a couple of others, Audacity, I call it Fruit Loops, but I'm not sure what the actual name of it is. There's a couple of music editors that allow you to do pitch shifting. All of these do. In fact, even Goldwave has a version now. I think it's like $50, same as the Sony SoundForge. $50–$60 you can get one that'll do this, or you can pay Adobe's price. I pay, just a little advertisement here, I pay $50 a month and I get all of the Adobe programs. Alright, and there's quite a few of them. Photoshop and Premiere, and this is the media encoder and all that. And the reason that I prefer to do that is because I use Photoshop all the time, and I use Premiere all the time because I have a YouTube channel. And I love to use Edition because it's so easy, and I've come to know it. I'm using it in school and all. So, but every one of those programs will have some method of doing pitch shifting. They may call it pitch bend or pitch curve or something else, but that's what it is. And in here in Edition, what you have to do is you have to click on this stopwatch here. I don't know why the tooltip isn't coming out for that, but there it is. This enables clip stretching. Okay, see the little triangles that pop up here when I click on that? That allows you to grab a hold of this and stretch it. Whoops, didn't quite do it right. And that'll change the pitch and length of the track. Okay, you can shorten it, which that'll be really munchkin sound there, or stretch it out, and that'll make it really longer and deeper. And you could do that. You could sit there and you could fiddle with this all day long, trying to get an appropriate mix of some sort or stretch of some sort in order for it to sound right. But you don't have to do that, because there is a mathematical formula using logarithms to correct for they call it angular velocity, but pitch shifting. Okay, but you don't have to know how to do math in order to use this, because there's a website out there, and I'll put this in the description, that has a calculator on it. So all you have to do is put in where you start from in RPM and where you want to end. And we know, and all you have to do is ask, like a driver or the pilot or whatever, hey, what's your RPM level right now? Okay, and you're not going to walk out and talk to most of these pilots in their airplanes and ask them what their RPM level is, but you know this because you fly these airplanes in the game, and Hi-Tech has programmed them correctly. All right, so you know what RPM level that aircraft and prop are running at, and you can make calculations accordingly. All right. So anyway, in order to, let me get back out here to where you can see what's going on. I have 1500 in the middle. I'm going to go up to 2600 at the top and down to 700 at the bottom. All right. This is going to be my range for the exhaust on this tank. In order to fix this to where you can do a pitch shift on the fly, you open up stretch, make sure that rendered high quality is set and that vary speed is set. Now, this is so that you get excellent results. The appropriate pitch correction on this is done in semitones, as you can see here. All right, and when we go down to 700 RPM, we are going to have to do a pitch shift by entering a new value here, and in this case we're going to use minus, because we're going down, 13.19. all right, and that's going to stretch it out here, and it's while it renders that, it's going to keep this busy here. When we want to go up to 2600 RPM, we go up to 9.52. Now, either one of these could require that we do EQ on the audio that results. You can, this is in the Properties tab where I've done all these changes here. And you may have to modify this by going into the window and making sure that, you know, Properties is open and Effects, etc. Okay. Actually, I think the Effects is open by default here, the Effects rack. It doesn't show it, but anyway. So anyway, what you do is you come in here and and you can do EQ, parametric equalization, if required. And you can see where I've actually already modified the exhaust on this Tiger too. And this is to get rid of anomalies that come about as a result of shrinking the sound. Alright. Now I'm going to go ahead and audition this idle here. And it just it has a hard limiter on there so that it doesn't get to be too peaky. And speaking of, okay, the levels for aircraft engines in my mixes anyway are going to be set to -3. Explosions and guns will be at -1. Engines and exhaust for the tanks will be at -9. And any human speech that occurs will be between -12 and -6. Okay, the engine sounds, the reason that I do them at -9 is because when you mix multiple levels of audio together, it's only going to result in a louder sound. Okay, so at aircraft at -3, you have to be real careful how you balance that out. But it's going to be probably one of the loudest sounds you're going to run into in the game is cockpit levels. Okay, explosions are close; they're pretty loud, but that engine being right next to your head is very loud. Bombers are not as noisy as the fighter planes are, but they're pretty bad. For instance, I recorded the audio on the B-29. And riding in the nose position with a microphone anywhere near that plexiglass nose section caused so much. Well, I'll just put it to you this way: I had to do EQ that would make this look like nothing. You know, I had to do multiple levels of EQ in order to get rid of that, and it still wasn't really very usable. It got real soft. It was a real disappointment to me anyway, because after experiencing that I wanted to share it with everybody and it just wasn't possible. So anyway, I don't know if I want to spend that kind of money again either. So here is the Tiger at idle. You can hear that metal, can't you? Wow. Anybody that says that sound doesn't have bass doesn't know what he's talking about. That's all I'm saying. Okay. Now here we're going to go down here to the tank, the same exhaust at 2600 RPM. Now bear in mind this is going to be reinforced by the engine at the same velocity. Now I can hear that mixing this sound the way that I have, and what I've done is I've taken a very short segment and I've pasted multiple copies at the end of each previous soundtrack until I've gotten a piece that's a minute long. The original was about, I think it was 6 seconds, something like that, puny. So what happens is, let's go ahead and mix this down to a new file. What happens is this this sound gets to be well, it has perturbations in it, or anomalies, or whatever you want to call it. So we have to zoom in real close to the bottom of this thing, and you can see that that it's created noise. There's actually generated noise in here. See these little spikes here? And they come all the way up to here. So what we're going to end up having to do is crop this sound like so in order to get rid of those little ticks. Now that gets rid of a little bit of bass, but you can't hear this sound down here. Don't tell me you can. so we're going to crop off a little more. Still not liking what I'm hearing. Alright, that's got it. Now I can still tell that there's a little bit of noise in there, but I think the engine sound is going to, when they're run together, is going to cover that up. So that's fine like that. That's the 2600 RPM level. That would be right here. Now you would want to do this for, well, let's say from 1500 down. I would go 1250, 1000, 900, 800, and then 700. And from here I would go 1750, 2000, 2250, 2500, and then I don't know why I have an extra track in there, but the 2600 level. And then I would also do, because this is the maximum on this tank, I would also go ahead and do a 2750 and a 3000, because as you know in the game, when you go down a hill, the tank is going to speed up, and if you allow it to stretch the 1500 or shrink the 1500, or excuse me, 2600 RPM level, it's going to sound funny. But if you have it pitch shifted already, it'll sound more appropriate. It'll still not be realistic, but it'll be better than it would if you didn't do that. Okay? Now I've taken the time to go ahead and line this up so that all of the tracks are filled out, properly rendered. So what I've done also is zoomed in up here on the upper timeline and set the cursor at 12 seconds. So what I'm going to do now is shrink all of these down, okay, so that they're 12 seconds long. And this is very roughly done. You still have to check, because at this gross scale here, you know, I could be missing that line very badly. Whoops. And you want everything, you want to make sure that you're getting the full 12 seconds out of this. The reason that I'm doing this is because we're going to mix this down and create a loop for each one of these speeds, and those loops will be used inside of FMOD in order for us to create a smooth transition for the engine range. Boy, I tell you, this wears you out, because even though I've produced a rather rapid video for you guys, this has taken hours to do this and get everything set perfectly, and to redo it after I make a mistake, etc., etc. So well, it's looking fairly decent anyway. Generally speaking, it takes about an hour just to mix these down, but I'll give you the process real quick. You take a multi-track mix down session to new file for the entire session, but I have a single track soloed, so it's going to create one track. Now that's the idle speed. Now what you want to do is make sure that it loops properly. This one does, just by default. Isn't that wonderful? I love it. Okay, so I'm going to save that as a Tiger 2 or King Tiger exhaust. Now this is the spectrum here. What I want to do is the actual exhaust. because we're going to save these files by RPM, 700 RPM. And there is no spread, and it's not a mixdown. That's the legitimate file. And it's at 22 kilohertz, mono, 16-bit. That's very important, because we are creating a ton more WAV files, more sound, to put into the game. This is going to take a huge amount of memory. A lot more. Look at that, 536 kilobytes. That means this could be probably 8 megabytes just for the exhaust sound. Think about that. Games are really getting big, ain't they? Okay, so take that off of solo and I'll move on to the next file, etc., etc. So once I have this done, I'll come back and show you how I move it into FMOD. Alright, here I've finished the export process. I've filled in some details and notes for myself. I'm going to save the session here. I don't think I'll need it again, but just in case. Close this. You can see where I've taken all the files from where I had saved them, and I've tucked them into the Aces High Custom Sounds assets folder for this particular project, under the what I've created, a Tiger 2 and exhaust folder. Now when I go into FMOD, this is going to show up as a new file, and several new files. What you want to do is import the contents, and then we can get rid of these proxies here. These are the exhaust sounds that I've been using up until this point. And of course I still have the engine to create. So what we're going to do is pull these files in one at a time by RPM level. This is 700 RPM, so we'll pull it down to 500 and up to about 9. We have to loop it so that it will loop on its own. And we have to add modulation, auto pitch, and we're going to set this to 0.7 with 700 RPM. Then we go to the next one, which is 800. Do the same thing. Gets a little tedious. But the idea here is to create something that smoothly translates from one RPM level to another. So we'll always have that going for us, right? Okay. Pull in 1,000. Where is it? Now it's going to go from 1,000 to 1,250. So we're going to bring that one down to 1,200. Up to 1,200, I mean. Bring this one down to 1,150. The next one will be 1,500. All right, yeah. I have to double check myself. I've done this so many times. It's time to make mistakes, if you know what I mean. $1,750, 1,700, yeah, give or take. Okay, let's try to catch up on the pitch modulation, auto pitch. Let's see, that would be 900.9, so on, etc. If you don't do this part, it will sound terrible, I promise you. And you can go ahead and audition that if you want. Correct me for talking before I finished just saying that. Before I finished setting the sound down anyway. Look at that. Isn't that cool? Now the engine will never actually run this slow, okay? But you know it can. I like that. That engine is terrible, trust me. Can't wait to finish that engine and get everything working right so I can use this tank online a little bit more. Actually, I've been using it anyway, but it it just sounds terrible right now. Anyway, I'll go ahead and finish this out and hopefully we'll be able to share this someday soon. I think we're finished here as far as that goes. You now see how to do that anyway. As far as events are concerned, this is the loop for the engine right there. It's not actually finished yet, but oh, it's Tiger 1. What am I doing? There we go. This is the loop for the Tiger 2. Once I get it finished, it will be anyway. The track sounds are slightly different. Like I said, they run from like 1 RPM up to about 60. Okay? The track sound would go here. What you would do is you would create a referenced event for the Tiger track, which I don't have yet. Go ahead and make one. And so what you would do is you would start up the move command here. You would take this and drag it into here like so. I hate it when I do that. And in order to make that thing look like that, just double click right here. Boom. Now, in order to put sound in there, okay, you're going to do exactly what we just did. You're going to use the semitones, and you're going to create different versions of the same sound that loop from 1 RPM up to 60. And then you would put them right here. Okay, Tiger track loop, and then this would be RPM or speed in miles per hour, depending on how you do it. Okay, if you want to think of it as speed in miles per hour, and the track rotates at 60 RPM, that's 24 miles per hour. Okay, of course it's gonna have to reach over a range of speeds or RPM levels, like well, 60 RPM. So just depends on how you want to do it. You can use any parameter you want here. RPM, for instance, 0 to 60, and then you would put your tracks in here. Otherwise, you could use miles per hour, which is what I do in the tracked what I've done previously in the tracked vehicles anyway, as I've used miles per hour. So you would delete that, etc. Speed, mph, and it would be 1 to 24 for the Tiger, and you would put your different track loops in here for that. Anyway, I hope you've learned something. I hope you've enjoyed this. I know it's a bit technical and boring for a lot of people, but you know, this is part of what we have to have in the game now if we're going to have quality sounds. Actually, as I understand it, High Tech Creations is eventually going to be adding their own above and beyond what they have right now. But you know, since I've gone out there and I've collected all these sounds and intend to collect even more, I'm going to go ahead and produce a sound pack anyway. So hopefully somebody else will do the same thing. Maybe somebody will come up with some original ideas about how to do things that I haven't even thought of. I'd like to see more. Anyway, give us a like, subscribe, come back and see us. Later.